You're now tuned in to the original podcast of A Stronger Foundation. Welcome. Some call me Doctor, others call me Master T. You can call me anytime. I'm Sweet T, the academic architect PDO. That's planner, designer, and overseer of the academic success plan for kids. So tell your neighbor or call somebody and let them know it's that time. Hey y'all, let's get building. Hey there. This podcast is called Rosa and Martin Doing the Most. That's Rosa and Martin Doing the Most. So I had a friend back in pharmacy school whose catchphrase was, "Child, they doing the most." Translation, they are overstudying. Meanwhile, at church, when I used to try to be the perfect Christian girl, I'd hear people say, "Child, it don't take all that." Translation, you don't have to follow all those rules. Point is, though, it's an indirect insult to our ancestors who witnessed firsthand that it did take all that and who never thought twice about doing the most. It wasn't even an option for them. In a previous episode, I alerted that as a people, we may have lost sight of the mission that was begun by our courageous ancestors. Every one of their freedom missions could be described as dangerous, life-threatening, and not to mention selfless. But it's sad to know that we now presumptuously take for granted many of the freedoms they fought for. For those times spanning from when all American blacks, or blacks in general, were bricks, to a later time when a small percentage were permitted to become brains. Our courageous ancestors fought for the present time as well, but sadly, so many of us continue to refuse to take advantage of the priceless opportunities to become the brains, essentially making steps backwards by taking pride in replacing ourselves in the back of the bus. Now, whatever could be a justifiable rationale for that? I don't know. Possibly because we now live in a time where opposite is cool. You know, being stupid equals being cool, and doing bad is good. Unfortunately, back of the bus is still back of the bus. If Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had the mentality, if he had that mentality, we may still have been excluded from the best academic opportunities and resources that are available to us today. In my head, I can hear some saying, "Oh, child, we are still fighting." And although I acknowledge that is true, at least agree with me that the times are now better. It's not like it was. In algebraic terms, their sacrifices has greatly reduced our mx plus b. Characteristics of an uphill battle is that it's hard to climb due to the slippery slope, and it's easy for hikers to keep losing ground and their footing. So the contributions of our ancestors essentially reduced the slope, our mx plus b, making the journey less uphill and more leveled, producing improved conditions ultimately. Their contributions could be represented in the analogy of adding trees to a very slippery hill, so that we have an anchor to grab onto as we pull ourselves up, or at least something to break our fall if we should happen to slip. Now, I believe that the best way to appreciate the hard work of our ancestors is to continue to pursue the great opportunities that they gave their lives for, just so that just so those who came after them would have a better life. Selfless. Their sacrifice has given opportunities to us for countless advancements. But the work is not done. The mission is not complete. The baton has been passed, and we must continue the journey through our children. It's not quite time to celebrate. We must keep building. The story of Harriet Tubman tells how she courageously engaged in one life-threatening mission after another while leading as many black slaves as she possibly could to freedom. Now, as I consider the various challenges she must have endured, even from the very people she risked her own life to save, it brings another story to mind. In the biblical story of Moses, a man who was chosen to take a group of people into the land that was promised to them. But the people were unruly and difficult to lead. They had the mentality that it don't take all that. And they told Moses, "Child, you doing the most." They figured that all that walking was outdated. Their persistent resistance to hard work was a huge obstacle for which they would be penalized. As far as they were concerned, all that sweating and hunger was overrated. Too much work effort, too much sacrifice. Get us there already, Moses. The people were selfish, and they were not trying to hear who did what to get them where. They were like, "Oh yeah, Rosa, Martin, yeah, thanks. Where's the cake? Give me the keys." Long story short, it took 40 years to get to a place that was possibly less than 1 year in distance away. How does this apply? I believe that we as a people could be further ahead if we are willing to carry the torch and bear the mantle of sacrifice for that next generation to come. Just think, if the sacrifices of our ancestors gave us this much grounds, imagine where we could be if we embrace the attitude, it takes all that and more. Remember that although this podcast is presented to parents, it focuses on the education of children. And so the next time your child cries about reading with bulky tears flowing like Niagara Falls, before you surrender and let them off the hook, please remember, please consider those tears that must have streamed down Rosa's face as she took a stand for you and me and for your child. So hand them a box of Kleenex, followed by a great book. And that is how you show love. And you would be doing the most. Thanks for listening.